All right, now Seattle lawmakers are considering a new ordinance that would make it illegal to solicit unwilling homeowners to sell their properties. It's apparently a thing. I never received a phone call from someone saying, "Hey, I know where you live. Do you want to put your house on the market?" But it's happening. And the legislation introduced by Councilmember Dion Foster aims to establish a voluntary city managed, basically, do not solicit list. So, under this ordinance, contacting someone on this list, which offers an offering to buy or sell their home, would be classified as an unfair housing practice. And violators could be subject to a $1,000 fine for a first offense, and it would go up after that. And there was a meeting this week of the Housing, Arts, and Civil Rights Committee, and a lot of locals showed up and said in some cases they feel hunted in their homes due to a barrage of these cold calls and unsolicited, direct emails and people literally knocking on their front door saying, "Hey, you want to list your house? I can help you out with that." This gentleman spoke at that hearing. His name is Larry Dean, and he's one, he said, of only 3 Black families left in the central Seattle neighborhood where he lives. And he says he doesn't want to sell his house and he wants people to stop soliciting him.
I get a lot of those calls. And, they ask me, "Are you Larry Dean?" I said, "Yes." "Are you the homeowner?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "We're interested in selling buying your house." And I said, "Is your house for sale?" I asked them, are you selling your house? "My house is not for sale." And then they said, we can give you this. I said, "You got $10 million? I ain't no fool, And I don't know. I mean, in my area, I live in Madrona. There's only 3 Black families in the neighborhood. And that was my parents' home. And, I was the minority. I was looking around. I said, "Where you people come from?" I've been here for the longest, and all of a sudden things want to change. But, and then they'll send me letters. They sent a letter saying, "You don't need to live there. My daughter needs to live there." And I told my father, I said, "What kind of mess is this?" So I don't want to be on no list. What I'm saying is I want to be on a no-call list.
Now, if this measure does pass, the task of enforcing the registry is going to fall to the city's Office for Civil Rights. So they have requested funding for a new full time staffer to manage the workload that would be required for this. The U.S. Supreme Court this morning, I think it was 7:02 a.m., the first of the decisions they handed down today had to do with a ban of biological boys in girls' sports. And what the court upheld today in a 6-3 decision was that the states have a right to have bans on this to protect girls in sports, to keep boys out of girls' bathrooms and locker rooms, and basically upholding Title IX protections. We have 21 states that currently have these laws in place to protect girls' sports, but Washington is among the remaining 23 states that allow biological boys to participate in girls' sports and use their bathrooms and their locker rooms. Now, Washington voters may well change that come November through an initiative on the ballot. So today's ruling and encouragement for those who want to protect girls' sports. But again, the whole issue is going to be ultimately decided by Washington voters in November. Now, you may recall if you are a follower of this podcast and reader at our Center Square Washington page, you've probably seen stories and on social media they've been prominent. A couple of girls at the center of this fight here in the state of Washington. One of them is 17-year-old Frances Stott. She will be a senior at Tumwater High School this coming September, her final year in high school. And she refused to play couple of years ago in a basketball game. Girls basketball player, longtime player, since she was a little girl, but she refused to play when she saw that there was a biological male on the opposing team. And she said, I'm not going to play against him. He's a man, literally an 18-year-old man. And subsequently, she ended up being investigated by the Tumwater School District and the WIAA, Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. She was ultimately cleared of any wrongdoing, but they accused her of harassment and misgendering because she said, that's a man. I'm not playing against him. I'm a female entitled to do so. So I got reaction today from Francis just after that SCOTUS ruling came down.
So I think that it is a very great decision. I mean, I'm very happy that um, have been given that opportunity. I think it's really disappointing that it was a 6-3 voting, and the three people who voted no are women. So it is interesting to see them not standing up for other girls and women as well. I think that's disappointing. But I also think that although it is a win, it's not done in Washington. We still need people to vote yes in November. We still need people to protect the girls in Washington state because Jamie Peterson, Bob Ferguson, Chris Reichdahl, they will not. And so we need the people of Washington state to stand up and protect us girls because it is a very great accomplishment. It is something that we were praying for and hoping for, but it doesn't change anything in Washington as of now.
The other young lady at the center of this fight here in Washington state, who has been so brave and courageous to speak up for protecting girls' sports, is 16-year-old Annalie Wilson, a student at Eastmont High School in Wenatchee. Now, she lost a track meet when she was in 8th grade to a boy. She, stood on the podium and had to be knocked down, replaced up on the top by a biological male. Obviously, boys have testosterone and some, ability in sports and competition to be stronger, faster. We know that to be a biological fact. But she became very vocal as a young girl to speak out against this and said, "I think this is wrong." Um, I spoke with Annalie Wilson and her mom this morning, Elizabeth Wilson as well, just again after that ruling came down from the US Supreme Court.
We're just hoping that in November, Washington will be able to agree with this and that we can continue moving in the right direction. So, yeah.
Yes, and just going off what the girl said is that, yes, this is our step in the right direction. So we're going to take that win. And there is a lot of work to be done at the ballots. And that's on us as the adults who have the opportunity and the privilege to vote, to go to these ballots and to stand up and protect Title IX and protect our girls.
Now, Initiative 638, which is really IL-26, which stands for Initiative to the Legislature 26-638. Of course, the legislature declined to take these up, even though they're required by our state constitution to do so. So they automatically go to voters on the November ballot. This is an initiative backed by Let's Go Washington, and it seeks to require middle and high school students to compete based on their biological sex assignment at birth. So, barring biological male students from joining girls' sports teams. Now, the group No Hate in Washington State, their campaign manager, Libby Watson, emailed us here at the Center Square a statement following the ruling this morning. And it said in part this: Washington's blanket sports ban is the most extreme proposal of its kind in the country. Unlike the cases decided by the court today, it will require girls who wish to participate in sports to prove their sex through invasive genital examinations. Its impacts will not just be felt by trans girls, but by every girl in our state who wants to participate in K-12 athletics. That has been kind of the argument, and you're going to see it between now and the November election, basically saying, don't support this initiative because boys as well, will have to undergo invasive genital exams. That's what they say. But that really is not accurate. And it is informing people, wrongly before they decide such an important issue as this on the ballot. So Let's Go Washington sent me a statement in response to what the No Hate in Washington State group put out today. And that response statement said in part, the initiative does not state the girls will be subject to the exams that Hate in Washington State is so pathetically pushing. In the routine sports exam that already takes place between a doctor and a patient, the doctor and student athlete will decide which avenue to determine their biological gender makes most sense. That can be a verification of their previous medical records, a blood test, a history of knowing the patient, or whatever method the patient and doctor determine. Then a doctor checks a box, as doctors already do, on their existing medical form. Again, that's from Let's Go Washington in response to the claims coming from the No Hate in Washington State group, contending that there will be these invasive exams by doctors when that is actually not the case. And we also want to share a statement that we got today from Washington Attorney General Nick Brown, who posted this after the ruling this morning about transgender athletes, writing, "It's dismaying that the court would permit states to discriminate against trans student athletes. This ruling does not change Washington law, and we will continue to uphold the rights and dignity of trans youth." Now, I reached out to the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Rakedahl, early this morning, even before that ruling came out at 7 a.m., saying, I'm going to, be waiting for a statement. When my article goes up later today, that should be in time to provide that statement. But just ahead of recording this podcast today, OSPI said they were not ready to provide that statement just yet. But again, it's forthcoming, and I will share that in my article on our Center Square Washington page. So again, despite the ruling this morning from the U.S. Supreme Court, ultimately it's up to the states, and Washington voters will have the final say on this come November. So even as they are under state and federal investigation, the Seattle Urban League has secured another rather large bucket of funding for affordable housing. And we at the Center Square have been reporting on this controversy for much of the last year, and concerns about the use of Washington State's Community Reinvestment Program, CRP funds. It's a race-based program that was created to support home ownership and really lift up minority communities by providing these grants and funding for programs that assist low-income households, and to support, again, minority-owned business development as well. Well, the funds are administered by the Washington Department of Commerce and initially amounted to what was $200 million in taxpayer funds to lift up these communities that were disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs, they said, and housing discrimination policies of the past. So however you feel about these race-based loan and grant programs, the issue that we've been trying to bring some attention to for the last year are really whether or not there's some self-dealing going on within these programs. And Corey Orvold, a Tacoma real estate broker, has been the main whistleblower on this for the last year. And I caught up with her again this morning to kind of recap how all of this was initially exposed.
I volunteered with the Tacoma Urban League for 8 years, 8.5 years, and my role was everything housing. So if a community member needed assistance, they'd call me. With that, it was well known in the community that I had that role. And so when Desiree Wilkins Finch became the new CEO, things started to change. And I saw the decline of an organization I deeply care about. And, after the conversation about her saying that, our hands aren't clean, I've been giving money to my friends in response to, the questioning of the Seattle Urban League and their practices around the Community Reinvestment Program and allocation of funds, I resigned. And once resigning, it really just opened the door to start researching. And when I started researching, that's when I started uncovering just the self dealing, the self enrichment, the cliquish, I'll help my friends, I'll help my family, but the rest of the community was SOL. It's really hard to see, even a year later that we're still picking up the pieces. I have people contacting me from the story saying, thank you for, helping. Thank you for using your voice. Um, how do I get assistance?
So again, this is back on our radar this week because the Washington Department of Commerce recently awarded millions to dozens of organizations for affordable housing projects, and the Seattle Urban League, despite being under investigation at the state and federal level for alleged self-dealing, received another 1.47 million. It is going to be for 36 affordable housing units that they are helping to construct. Now, this was part of what was called the 2026 Housing Preservation Program Awards. And it was nearly $40 million in all to 47 different multifamily affordable housing award recipients. It's supposed to construct or preserve more than 1,400 multifamily units with this funding. But again, the award for Seattle Urban League comes as the organization is under state and federal scrutiny. And the FBI has been meeting with the whistleblower, again, who resigned, as you just saw, from Tacoma Urban League after raising these issues and being told there's nothing to see here. She didn't want to be part of it anymore. She instead wanted to expose this alleged self dealing. So she shared again with me she's been meeting with federal officials. She has filed multiple complaints that have state scrutiny and federal scrutiny, and she's confident the people who may have, in her opinion, taken advantage of this and fraudulently, self-dealt taxpayer funds, she believes they're ultimately going to be held accountable.
This is a major scandal, right? The intelligence level of these people is not, this level of handling this level of corruption, right? I said it to TJ that, this is the American greed level of corruption with the skill level of going to Walmart and skipping some items in the self-checkout. These are not intelligent people. When they're getting called out, when things are being, pointed out of errors that they've made, documents are being re-recorded, scribbled out. Well, we didn't give 100,000, we gave 50,000. I mean, that's stupid. That's ridiculous that you're telling on yourself.
So I am preparing an article for Wednesday publication. I've reached out to Commerce and will also be reaching out again to the Office of Attorney General Nick Brown to see what they have to say about the fact that Seattle Metropolitan Urban League is again receiving millions in taxpayer funds while under investigation for alleged self-dealing. So that'll come up in my article tomorrow, much more to come. So in keeping with our transportation theme, Sound Transit, they are actually having a good month. I'll give them credit where credit is due. It's in large part because it's World Cup and we've got summer tourists that are visiting Seattle. So on June 19th, that was the day that USA Soccer played Australia. That was an exciting match to be sure. Sound Transit and King County Metro carried over 500,000 passengers on that day alone on their trains, buses, and their boats. Because, of course, you got the King County water taxi, which was hugely popular this time of year, even without World Cup travelers in town. But when the crowds are gone and people, it's just regular commuters driving or riding, I should say, the buses and the trains, what's ridership really look like? Now, again, to Sound Transit's credit, when Linwood Link opened last year, a lot of people started riding that because there's a ton of people that live in Snohomish County that work in, Seattle and greater Seattle area. And so getting on that train instead of slogging through what is sometimes a 2-hour commute from Linwood into Seattle, that makes sense for people. saving money, saving wear and tear on their car. I get that. And that makes total sense to me. And that link is actually proving to be fairly successful. But other links, like the most recent link extension, which is in the community where I live in Federal Way, doesn't look like there's a heck of a lot of people riding that train as yet. Maybe it'll catch on. At this point, it hasn't really caught on. So here is Washington Policy Center's Transportation Center Director Charles Prestrud kind of talking about whether or not you ride the train, you're paying for it.
The average household in the Sound Transit Tasking District pays about $1,700 per year in taxes to Sound Transit. On top of that, people who live in King County also paying taxes to Metro. That's maybe another $750 a year, maybe a little more. If you live in the city of Seattle, you're paying additional taxes on top of that to subsidize transit that goes through the city of Seattle and that they pay to the transit agencies. So we're paying a very high price, and transit is very heavily subsidized in the Puget Sound region, much more so than almost anywhere else in the country. But what hasn't gotten much attention, if you look at the Puget Sound Regional Council's new 2050 plan, which is usually based on very optimistic forecasts, it shows that in the year 2050, transit will have a mode share of 4.7%, which means that more than 95% of the trips will not be on transit.
And while more people are certainly using Link, the future of the system is not looking bright. You may recall some of my colleagues have written about this extensively on our Center Square Washington page. It was back in May. Sound Transit came forward and said we have a projected $34 billion, yes, that's with a B, $billion deficit. And so they are voting to defer some of their Sound Transit 3 promised projects, including the Ballard Link extension between Seattle Center and Ballard. Is it just going to be scaled back, postponed, perhaps canceled entirely? Some of the other projects are already years delayed. When Federal Way finally opened in December, just this last December of 2026, I think it was 2.5 years behind. Some of that was blamed on COVID. Some of it was blamed on the concrete workers union strike. So there's other factors that go into those delays. But $34 billion in the hole, and taxpayers, as you heard Charles from WPC say, we are paying a heck of a lot for it. In fact, I heard another stat I want to share with you from Washington Policy Center's Paul Guppy over the weekend in one of his podcasts that I was watching. He said that for everything we've paid into Sound Transit and will continue, we're obligated to pay many years, decades out, right, for all of these projects. You could give every person, man, woman, child in the state of Washington an $18,000 check. I found that to be a pretty remarkable statistic. I mean, for crying out loud, for that price, you could go buy yourself a new used car and not be reliant on the transit system. But anyway, that's a topic for another day.